This video is proudly sponsored by Squarespace. Stick around until the end of the video where I'll be sharing a special deal they're making available through my channel. Now over to Grant, who's taking the reins for this one while I'm on holiday.
A simple definition of agility is our body's ability to be fast and nimble, change direction and change the positioning of our body, all while we remain actively in motion. Agility is also the ability to rapidly accelerate or decelerate. It's also influenced by things like balance, strength, coordination and skill level, and in this video we're going to be exploring these traits. My name is Grant Stevens and welcome to this video about developing agility and footwork. Within agility, I also like to consider things like dexterity and grace as a part of it as well. You can see when somebody has a good command of their physical body by how they perform tasks that are not really related to their actual sport, for instance. So things like how somebody climbs the stairs. This video is going to focus on training athletic agility, but I don't think the importance of the trait can be overstated. A lack of agility and movement in general is one of the biggest contributing factors to aging in people who've been relatively sedentary their whole lives. So we all know like an elderly relative or somebody that's taken a fall and didn't have the strength and reactions in order to prevent themselves from serious harm. And the sad thing about that is it generally tends to be viewed as like, this is just what happens when you get old and there's nothing that can be done about it. But I personally feel that that's fundamentally false, and the deleterious effects of this can be greatly mitigated by even just basic training and self-maintenance. So agility can be improved by first developing an adequate base of strength and conditioning that is appropriate to the skill level of the athlete. When thinking about this, your mind will probably jump to obvious examples in which agility plays a role, like parkour or football, for instance. But having good agility is a staple trait that will benefit you in all areas of life and training. For example, starting out, bodybuilders might feel like they don't need to do agility training because it plays little importance in gaining muscle, which is their main goal. But they often tend to come back to that later on once they've been training a little bit, because they realize the importance of maintenance in that area. Now, if they were to include agility development into their training, it would make them more well-rounded and can help things like maintaining proper alignment and posture during lifts, which then translates to increasing their gains. Aside to that, agility training can help to protect vulnerable areas such as the lower back, shoulders and ankles that are commonly injured during training. If you think about somebody like an elite soldier that requires a good balance of strength, power and endurance, but also agility, or even the pioneer himself.
I'm Batman.
Adam's a fine example of a good balance of these traits. He's incredibly strong and powerful, but I'm always pleasantly surprised when we've done any sparring together just how fast he is as well. Now, if I could only get him to just relax a little bit more. There's some overarching principles in agility training as a whole, but then there will also be specific requirements depending on the activity that you choose. For me in martial arts, there are obvious ones like being able to shift my weight quickly, and I'll cover these in more detail later, including drills to develop them. But I've also found there's a vast array of these kind of secondary benefits that come as well, which for me translates to things like improving the actual execution of the techniques themselves, which otherwise wouldn't become apparent without good agility development. This is expressed in things like being able to rotate my body from a regular stance into a turning kicking position rapidly, resulting in the whole technique taking place over a much shorter duration, and then because of that increase in speed, it also hits with greater force. Another example might be in striking with the hands, for instance. Now, in boxing, it's an obvious trait that you need to be able to move in and out of danger zones effectively to evade your opponent's strikes. But also having good agility will help you to be able to advance forward quickly, and if you're able to shift your whole weight forward rapidly, you can then load your punches up on the end of that movement to drastically increase their power output. So those were just a few benefits that we can gain from having good agility development, but now let's speak about the fundamental traits that make up this skill. One of the first ones is flexibility. Having a good degree of flexibility is often an overlooked factor of agility, and if we have tightness in certain muscles, it will express itself as a hindered and stiff looking movement, which will slow us down. You don't need to be able to do the splits or anything like that, but basically just ensure most of your muscles are relatively loose and there isn't any extreme inflexibility in any of them. Good balance is also a necessary foundation, and even the most basic of movements require at least some level of balance and agility to carry out. With the more complexity come in, the harder the movements are to perform. Balance is of paramount importance when being able to remain upright and stable during movements, and strengthening the core muscles is a big contributing factor to this. You can train balance in many different ways, so pick something that you basically get along with, and I like these types of exercises that are similar to my own activity. These combine movement and deceleration to strengthen the stabilization muscles and also improve balance. In a moment, I'm going to demonstrate some of the drills that I like to personally use to develop agility in my own training and give you guys a little bit of a routine to follow along with as well. But before we do that, it's firstly important to speak about the actual vehicle that's going to be carrying out those movements, which is our physical body. And it's kind of general physics that the lighter the load that you have, the easier it is going to be to shift that around. So if you have some extra baggage, then that's obviously going to play a factor and hinder your movement. Now that's within reason, and I'm certainly not saying just be as light as you can. So if you're underweight and severely lacking muscular development to be even able to move your body around effectively in the first place, then that's going to be something to focus on first. But the rule generally applies, I would say, that you want to kind of stick within a general range of your natural weight, so a little bit below or a little bit above. And if you exceed that range too much on either side, then you're likely to see decreases in your agility performance. There appears to be some outliers to this, people like Mike Tyson for instance, but on closer inspection the same rule generally applies. Now Tyson fought as a heavyweight but was considerably shorter than the majority of his opponents, but he could move like he did at that size because although he was big, that still wasn't that far out of his natural size. And this is some footage of him here at 15 years old, believe it or not. Now imagine if I desired to bulk up to the size of Tyson while thinking I'd be able to retain the agility I currently possess. Even though he's about 4 or so inches taller than me, that would require me gaining something like 60 extra pounds of weight in order to achieve that weight class that he fought as a heavyweight. Now we're going to move on to the actual agility training itself, and I find the best way to warm up for these types of exercises is just to perform the same ones or something very similar at a much more relaxed and slower pace. And then when it comes to actually performing the exercises at full speed, the way that you actually do these exercises is one of the crucial factors that makes all the difference. So these work best when they're done with intensity and with as few pauses as possible. And by pauses, I mean the slight resetting of a person's center of gravity during these movements. This can be seen in an exercise like the burpee, in which less experienced people will have to subtly reset their center of gravity halfway through the movement before completing the latter part, making it more like 2 separate exercises as opposed to one fluid movement like this. When you become experienced in doing exercises like this through many repetitions over time, they kind of take on the dimension of being almost like a skill in themselves. And then obviously that carries more knock-on benefits to your athletic performance afterwards. An example of this in my domain is how the set position before executing certain kicking techniques is shortened. So if you imagine like in a video game when you get a reload upgrade to one of your weapons, it shortens the time that it takes to reload that weapon. This is kind of similar to how it works with kicking as well. There's always a time where someone transitions from moving around to executing a kick and they have to subtly reset their center of gravity. The better you are at doing this, the less time that set takes, and obviously that results in a more effective technique. The first thing I'm going to use here is the jump rope in order to warm up for 5 minutes or so. So as you can see here, I'm just utilizing some basic movements at a moderate pace and then building up as I go. One of the big things with jump rope where many people go wrong is they jump too high and it kills the momentum and wastes energy. You should aim to almost float in rhythm and be very light on your feet. It should look as if you're almost not trying. Next, we're going to use the agility ladder, which is a great piece of equipment and costs only about $15. Again, this is going to start like a warm-up activity and just loosely going through a set of movements you've chosen. I'll do around 3 to 4 rounds of these, building up intensity as I go. And these are some of the movement patterns I often like to use. With the ladder, it's similar to jump rope in the fact that it should look and feel kind of rhythmic. The way you progress in this type of training is the process of incrementally removing the time it takes to complete each exercise or round. And this is done by making your movements as economical as possible, meaning that you're not doing any more than you have to at each stage. Any more than that and you're losing energy and time. Now we're going to move on to the main portion of this agility workout. And the way I like to do these is repeat the exercise as many times as possible in a 30-second time period. And I'll do about 3 to 4 different exercises, repeating each one for 30 seconds and then break for 30 seconds after those. Now you can take a rest in between each exercise or perform them all in succession if you prefer. I like to do them in succession as it adds an element of endurance in there as well. So this way I'm exposed to the stress of forcing myself to remain light on my feet and move quickly, all while being under increasing fatigue. So the first one I'm doing are these side-to-side touchdowns. Now you want to make sure that you're taking quite a few steps in between the shuffle, and I almost try and turn sort of 180 degrees in between each time I touch the floor. On this next one, I'm needling my feet, kind of like we do on the agility ladder, and then I'm moving into an in and out position with the feet at a rapid pace. When you do this, try to make sure that you're not using the upper body and all the tension stays in the legs. After that, I'm moving on to these full stance switches. So as you can see here, I'm moving my body as one complete unit. I'm not twisting at the waist at all. And I keep my hands locked into my body to make sure I'm isolating the leg muscles. I also like to do some 180 turnarounds, and I might even add a 360 in there as well. Lastly, I'm just working on shifting around some footwork and some turns, and I might even add a few punches in there as well. And as a bonus exercise, you can do these. I'm not exactly sure what they're called, but they are very useful as well. Just make sure that you're covering enough distance to provide a good amount of tension on that landing leg. Remember earlier when I said that the way that you do these exercises is what makes the difference and makes them work? And you'll know if you're doing this effectively if they feel relatively stressful upon the body. So you should be employing quite a significant amount of force into the transition and direction changes in order to complete them quickly. If you're not doing this sufficiently, then you're not keeping the muscles and tendons under enough tension throughout, and they aren't going to receive the sufficient stimulus to grow. The way this works during the stance switches, for instance, is in not stopping between the switches. By the time I feel that point of stillness as I land from one switch, I'm already engaging the muscles once again to move in that opposite direction. When you start to get tired during these, just repeat the movements at a slower pace rather than stopping in between, where you're going to lose the benefits. Many of the elements in these drills I also include into my martial arts movements in general. By doing this, I'm training them incidentally, which is where it becomes really interesting, and a form of self-expression that opens up many more options for your own unique style. You can be really flexible with this, and you can incorporate anything from that, including the warm-up, to make it the main focus of your workout. So instead of the stance drills like we did there being the main focus, you could make the ladder drills the focus, using more rounds and variations of different exercises at different speeds and so on. You can be really creative with it. Like anything, to improve in these, it's going to require consistency and persistence, and you should aim to gradually improve over time. But you should definitely see some improvements in your activity as knock-on benefits relatively quickly if you start incorporating this training. I'd also suggest trying out new activities as well, like maybe dance or parkour or something, to expose yourself to new movement patterns. So I hope you enjoyed this video and found something useful from it that you can take and incorporate into your own training in order to improve in your agility. As always, please follow me on social media. I am now actually uploading regular content to my YouTube channel. I know some people before were saying that Adam was promoting my channel all the time and I hadn't uploaded for ages, which is not the case anymore, so follow there, and I will see you in the next video.
So Squarespace is a website building platform that's used by many of the top brands on the web, but which is also extremely simple and easy for anyone to get started with. In fact, you can get a website up and running within minutes, especially thanks to their new Fluid engine that makes the process as simple as dragging and dropping the items where you want them on the page. You can start from one of many ready-made templates and then build on it from there to create exactly the website you want. But beyond that, you then have all the tools you could need to run your entire business from Squarespace. Blogging is simple thanks to advanced publishing tools that allow you to format, edit, and schedule posts for publishing later. There's social media integration, allowing you to simply and easily display your social feeds on your website and allow visitors to share the posts they enjoy with their networks. You can generate revenue through members-only gated content. You can manage your community with threaded comments, replies, and likes. You can handle things like SEO and e-commerce with ease thanks to many more powerful tools. And if you want to take this even further, then Squarespace allows for the use of third-party plugins that let you significantly expand the capabilities of your website. For e-commerce, for example, you can add things like sales tax reconciliation, global tracking, inventory management, and much more. If you want to learn more, then head over to squarespace.com, and when you're ready to take the plunge, head to squarespace.com/Bioneer to get 10% off of your first domain or website. Thanks so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, thanks to Grant for making it, and thanks to you guys for watching. Bye for now.